In Magic the Gathering, sagas are supposed to represent a large-scale event or story. So why is this one unfinished? Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to talk about a new card from the upcoming Theros Beyond Death set. Now, as I mentioned before at the beginning, this is a saga that we're going to be talking about. And sagas are overarching stories. You've just got this, some of them are like the entire Ice Age. The length, the time they encapsulate can vary, but there's one in particular, this one that we're going to look at from Theros Beyond Death, that is different than any other ones in a very interesting and flavorful way. So let's go ahead and talk about the Acron War. All right, so this is a red saga that actually involves two different communities, two different groups of people in the world of Theros. So before we delve into the entire concept behind the Acron War, I just want to draw your eye to the very top of the artwork where you can see individuals in blue and red. And these represent the kingdoms of Meletis and Acron. So I just want to give you a little bit of background information about these two groups before we delve into the flavor behind the war between them. So these two civilizations are at odds. One is a more militaristic, might makes right, strength-based society, and the other is more of a philosophers and thinkers style community, right? So you've got two very different views of existence. So we've got Meletis, and these are represented in blue in the war there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at Meletis Astronomer, and then we'll contrast that to the Acron Crusader, all right? So Meletis Astronomer is 1 blue, 1 colorless for a 1/3 human wizard. Whenever you cast a spell that targets Meletis Astronomer, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, the heroic mechanic is based around the concept of blessings from the gods. Having a spell that targets you normally would, in normal circumstances on Theros, Planeswalkers removed, would generally be some sort of godly blessing. So you can see in the artwork that this astronomer, this wizard, has leaned back. He's kind of leaned back to a slight degree. He's got one hand out in kind of a conjuring way and one hand out in sort of a cradling way. Above it, you can see a tiny little, is it a portal opening up? Is this a vision? Is this actually a gateway to the realm of the gods? Because what you need to bear in mind is that he allows you to reveal an enchantment from among the top 3 cards. And as a side note, I do really enjoy the fact that those 3 cards are represented by 3 different stars in the artwork. That's a nice way to visually represent the thematic concept of the card. So enchantments in the world of Theros can be gods or creatures made of god stuff. So this basically represents this Meletis Astronomer reaching out into the realm of the gods. And he looks really impressive. And if you can't tell, he actually has these blind milky white eyes that gives him sort of a more mystic feel. He's draped in wizard looking robes with the standard Meletis blue sash coming out across him. So this is someone from a city of intellectuals. Meletis is actually known for having like the highest ranking, most prestigious scholars in all of Theros. So this is a place of high learning. Now we contrast that to the Acron Crusader, and the Acron Crusader is a red card that we're dealing with here, right? So it's a scenario where, the one thing I do like to mention the Astronomer again is it feels very blue. The whole concept of that Astronomer feels very blue. Where the Acron Crusader, this definitely feels like a red creature. So he is 1 red for 1/1. He's a human soldier. Whenever you cast a spell that targets Acron Crusader, create a 1/1 red soldier creature token with haste. And the flavor text says, an Acron soldier's worth is measured by the number of swords raised by his battle cry. So you can see just like right away, based on the flavor behind it, you look at the artwork, you can see this is very much contrasted to the astronomer that we looked at. This guy here is in the heat of battle. You can see the distinctive style of Acron helmets, and we will see that again when we return to looking at the actual saga we're here to discuss today. But anyhow, he is, the whole concept is these are battle brothers, and your might, your worth in battle is your worth overall. And there is a very, very, very different sort of pose in this artwork compared to the astronomer. He is doing this sort of leaned back conjuration where the Acron Crusader is leaned forwards, leading his troops into battle. A big, burly muscle boy, right? So you can see by looking at this, I also like there's just this frenetic rage energy. The entire thing has this heavy red tint. So it really does contrast the two styles of people very well. And it's actually interesting to note that Gideon the Planeswalker is actually originally from Acroa. He's an Acroan. It's not something you would expect. If you had to decide where he was from originally, I doubt you would pick Acroa. But that is actually where he comes from. So we have the people of Meletis and the people of Acroa, and they are both involved in the saga of the Acron War. So the Acron War is 1 red, 3 colorless. And for those of you who don't know how sagas work, when you put a saga out, you put a lore counter on it. And then each turn after your draw step, you add a lore counter to it. Once you've done the final step of the final act, the final stage, however you want to look at it, once you've done that, then the card gets sacrificed. So how it works is the turn you put it into play, you gain control of target creature for as long as the Acron War remains on the battlefield. The second stage is until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able. And the third stage is each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. So basically the turn you put it out, you're grabbing one of your opponent's creatures. The next turn, or until basically the next turn, it sets it up so that until you get to your third turn, your opponents have to attack with every creature they can. And then once you come around to your turn again, then each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. Now, on a fun little silly note, if you can actually find a way to remove counters from the Acron War, then what you could do is put the card out and then remove the first counter off it, and every turn after your draw phase, you would get to add a counter to it, and it would be at stage 1 again. And so you could repeatedly take your opponent's creatures and get to keep them for as long as the enchantment's out. And that's an interesting concept, because normally red is only able to take creatures for like a turn. They aren't able to usually permanently steal them. There are a few ways to have a more permanent stealing of your opponent's creature with red, but usually it's blue that allows you to permanently steal your opponent's creatures, and red is the color that can only temporarily keep creatures. So it's cool that there's a workaround where you can make this into a more permanent style effect and continually take your opponent's creatures. But that has nothing to do with the flavor. That's just an interesting little side note. So from a power perspective, this seems like an all right card, right? I mean, it is 4 mana, but you can do a lot of mean things with it, taking your opponent's best creature, forcing them to swing in with their creatures on you, and then you can use that creature you stole from them to go ahead and take down one of their biggest guys, making friend fight against friend sort of scenario. Now, what this card is actually representing from a mythological standpoint is it appears to be a rendition of Helen of Troy, the whole thing that happened with her. If you guys don't know, I'm just going to sum it up really, really simply and briefly. Helen of Troy was the most beautiful woman in the world. The face that launched 1,000 ships. Basically, there are different variations of the story, depending on how it's told, where either this woman decided to elope with a prince, or she was captured and taken hostage by a prince. So either of those variations. And this is actually what led to a massive, massive war. The face that launched 1,000 ships is basically like, you stole my wife, I'm going to send 1,000 ships to bring her back to me. That sort of a scenario. So when we take a look at the artwork, you can see it is broken up into 3 sections. The first section is the depiction of the first ability, where you gain control of target creature for as long as the Acron War remains on the battlefield. And you can see in the artwork, you can see 2 individuals from Meletis. You have a ruler and his wife. You can see this because behind them you have thrones depicted. You can see that originally the Meletis woman was there with the Meletis dude because they have 2 thrones there. So they were either co-ruling or king and his wife, however you want to look at it. Now, from the artwork, you can see this is an Acron soldier. You more than likely actually the leader of the Acrons, right? In this kind of a scenario, this is probably like a high prince level individual, whatever the equivalent of that would be in Acron society. So you have this Acron, and you have this woman intentionally embracing him. You can see from the way that her arm is around the Acron and the way that she is putting her hand out. You can see the Meletian king. He is reaching out, beseeching, like, return to me. And she is going, nuh-uh, I don't want none, son. You guys are all doughy thinkers, and I want this hard, muscly Acron. You know what I'm saying? That sort of a vibe. It does seem like this is an intentional, she is leaving of her own accord. Now, she could be ensorcelled. She could be under some sort of spell. But the Acrons, I don't know, they feel like a pretty direct people. So it seems like they wouldn't likely use some sort of love spell to subjugate someone. But who knows? Either way, the point of it is, the first little story block there represents the first flavor, the flavor of the first little picture block there equals the actual rules effects of the first ability, where you gain control of target creature. So the blue woman who is being taken by the Acrons would be the creature who's been taking control for as long as the Acron War is out. Now, the second stage here, you can see the leader of Meletis shaking his fist, rallying his troops. There are a bunch of soldiers that are knelt down in deference to him as he most likely gives them some sort of rousing speech like, go get my wife back! I'm tired! I'm tired of making my own ham sandwiches! Go get my wife back. So that art block there represents the until your next turn, creatures your opponent control attack each combat if able. Now that one's not as clear in terms of the translation, where it's like, it is, you have to look at it from the perspective of, you are the one who stole the wife, okay? When you play this enchantment, you're the little red Acron soldier, and you have stolen the wife. So in the second piece of artwork, this is what's representative of your opponent having to attack each combat if able. It is your opponent, the Meletian king, going, no, 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 go get my wife back. So that actually, now that I look at it, it seems fairly direct as well. It does seem like a fairly easy to understand direct translation of it. Now, the third ability, where each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power, this is representative of the clashing of forces, both the Acrons and the Meletians, and obviously that results in a bunch of lost life. Now, I actually didn't notice this the first time I looked at the card, which blows my mind thinking about it. But I never noticed that the third panel is unfinished. I just looked at the clashing soldiers and went, okay, that makes sense. But I never actually noticed that this entire thing that we're looking at, this is a tapestry. And this is a tapestry, which, if you don't know, a tapestry is like a woven cloth wall hanging, you know, just kind of like an old school poster, but you know, not made of paper. So this tapestry is unfinished. You can actually see the threads trailing down and the frame that the tapestry is being hung on as it's being woven, which is a very cool little touch. And it actually leads to multiple questions. It makes you wonder, now, are the threads included in the arc because they're supposed to represent the threads of fate of these soldiers? Are the threads represented here because this was either an Acron or a Meletian weaver who was actually working on this, but because of the war, their life was cut short and they never got to finish? Like, is this a work in progress because it's ongoing? Is this something that will never be finished because its creator's life was lost in the battle? Was this even possibly made by one of the soldiers that was called off to war, and that's why it's unfinished? I do like the idea of the threads of fate being connected to it, because we have recently seen the new god, right? We've seen that new god who's the weaver of destinies, who uses threads of fate, her own hair, actually. So that, to me, is a nice little tie-in to the card as well. But the concept of this being an unfinished saga actually makes it very distinct. It makes it unique in that this is the only one that's like this. And it really does surprise me looking at it now, how I was able to miss the fact that the third panel was incomplete. Maybe it's because I read all the mechanics first, looked at the artwork, went, okay, and then just moved along. But returning to it, it blew my mind to see that it actually was this, like the whole concept of showing us this still on, what do you call it when you're weaving a tapestry? Is it a loom? I don't know what the specific device that you would hang a tapestry on as you're weaving it is, but I'm going to say loom. So it's cool to see this still on the loom, unfinished, and the different meanings that could have, right? We don't absolutely know why this is unfinished, but we do know that it is. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Why do you think this was left unfinished? Do you think it's for nefarious reasons? Do you think it's still a work in progress and the weaver just hasn't returned to finish it? I'm genuinely curious. Overall, I absolutely love the flavor behind this card, and I very much enjoy getting to share what I love with all of you. So thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Big shout out to all my patrons and channel members. I'm going to leave links here to some other fun videos on this channel, as well as links to my other channel where I make ridiculous videos where I eat terrible food and get very unhappy about it. So come on by and check that out if you'd like. Big shout out to everybody. Love my patrons and channel members, very much so. Anyways, thanks for coming by, everybody. And remember, together we are the 6th color of magic.